In the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Giza, Pharaoh Khufu gazed across the Nile Valley from his royal barge. It was approximately 2560 BCE, and the 4th dynasty ruler had accomplished what no modern leader could fathom, the creation of a monument so perfect in its mathematical precision that even today's engineers marvel at its construction. Yet Khufu did not build the pyramid merely as a testament to architectural brilliance. He understood something fundamental about leadership that many modern rulers have forgotten: true power endures only when it transcends the mortal ruler who wields it. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt reigned for nearly 3,000 years, establishing one of history's longest-lasting civilizations. Their approach to leadership revealed profound insights about governance, legitimacy, and the psychology of power that contemporary leaders would be wise to study. When Amenhotep III ruled Egypt from 1388 to 1351 BCE during the 18th dynasty's peak, he presided over unprecedented prosperity and stability. Unlike today's politicians who often govern with short-term electoral cycles in mind, Amenhotep cultivated what Egyptologists call symbolic immortality, the understanding that a leader's decisions must serve generations yet unborn. This pharaoh commissioned massive building projects not out of vanity but as physical manifestations of Ma'at, the cosmic order and balance that formed the foundation of Egyptian society. A ruler who builds only for his lifetime builds nothing of value, explained Professor Miriam Capshaw, Egyptologist at Cambridge University. The pharaohs planned across centuries, not fiscal quarters. Consider Ramesses II, who ruled from 1279 to 1213 BCE, an astonishing 66-year reign. When confronted with the expanding Hittite Empire, he did not merely react with military force. After the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE, where both sides claimed victory despite suffering heavy losses, Ramesses demonstrated remarkable strategic patience. Rather than pursuing endless conflict, he negotiated what historians recognize as the world's first documented peace treaty, establishing boundaries that would stabilize the region for generations. This treaty, preserved in hieroglyphics at the Temple of Karnak and in cuneiform on clay tablets discovered in the Hittite capital of Hattusa, reveals sophisticated diplomacy rarely seen in modern international relations. The agreement included provisions for extradition, mutual defense, and dynastic marriages to cement the alliance. Ramesses understood that sustainable power comes not from constant warfare but from strategic statecraft and cultural influence. Modern leaders often view themselves as indispensable, but the pharaohs institutionalized leadership transition through complex theological and administrative systems. When Thutmose III assumed the throne in 1479 BCE following the death of his stepmother Hatshepsut, he inherited not just authority but an entire bureaucratic apparatus that had functioned effectively for centuries. The pharaonic leadership model contains several elements that modern governance has largely abandoned. First, the divine nature of leadership. While contemporary secular states have separated religion from governance, the pharaohs understood that legitimate authority requires a moral and spiritual dimension that transcends mere political power. They were not simply heads of state, they were living gods, intermediaries between the cosmic and earthly realms, responsible for maintaining universal harmony. Second, pharaohs embraced a holistic approach to governance. When Senusret I ruled during the 12th dynasty, 1971 to 1926 BCE, he simultaneously directed massive irrigation projects to control Nile flooding, dispatched mining expeditions to Sinai for turquoise and copper, expanded Egypt's borders into Nubia to secure gold supplies, and commissioned literary works that would define Egyptian cultural identity for centuries. The pharaohs did not separate economic policy from cultural development or military strategy, noted Professor Farah Simons of the Oriental Institute. They understood these as interlocking elements of unified statecraft. In 30 BCE, after the suicide of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt, Octavian, later Emperor Augustus, annexed Egypt to Rome. Upon viewing the magnificent monuments and institutions created by 3 millennia of pharaonic rule, he reportedly remarked that he had added a province to the empire, failing to recognize that he had witnessed the end of something far greater than just another Mediterranean kingdom. The fall of ancient Egypt holds particularly relevant lessons. Archaeological evidence from the First Intermediate Period, circa 2181 to 2055 BCE, reveals how environmental challenges combined with political fragmentation led to the temporary collapse of central authority. When the annual Nile floods failed for several consecutive years around 2200 BCE, local governors, nomarchs, who had previously served the central government began operating independently, hoarding resources and undermining national cohesion. This period of instability ended only when leaders of the 11th dynasty, particularly Mentuhotep II, re-established central authority by balancing regional autonomy with national unity, a sophisticated federal approach that modern nations still struggle to perfect. The pharaohs understood that legitimate governance requires both central coordination and respect for local diversity. Perhaps most striking to modern observers is the pharaonic approach to truth and accountability. In the Prophecy of Neferti, a text from approximately 1991 BCE during the reign of Amenemhat I, the ideal ruler is described as one who speaks ma'at, truth and cosmic justice. While modern political discourse often tolerates deception as a tactical necessity, the pharaohs viewed truthfulness as essential to legitimate rule. The concept of ma'at required leaders to maintain cosmic balance through honest speech and just actions. When Akhenaten attempted to revolutionize Egyptian religion by replacing the traditional pantheon with worship of the Aten, sun disk, from 1353 to 1336 BCE, his reforms ultimately failed not because they were too radical, but because they disrupted the established order without creating sustainable new institutions. After his death, traditional practices were quickly restored under Tutankhamun, demonstrating that even divine pharaohs could not govern through personal will alone. Effective leadership required working within cultural frameworks that the population accepted as legitimate. The pharaonic understanding of time itself differed fundamentally from our modern perspective. While contemporary leaders typically focus on immediate problems and short-term solutions, Egyptian rulers operated with what Egyptologists call deep time awareness. When Pharaoh Dosa commissioned the Step Pyramid at Saqqara around 2630 BCE, the world's first major stone monument, he was establishing a pattern of monumental architecture that would continue for nearly 3,000 years. Modern leaders measure success in election cycles or quarterly earnings, explained Professor Mikhail Caldwell, historian of ancient civilizations. The pharaohs measured success in centuries and millennia. Their monuments were designed to last forever. Literally, the Egyptian phrase "for eternity" appears consistently in royal inscriptions. This long-term perspective extended beyond architecture. The ancient Egyptians developed one of history's most sophisticated legal and administrative systems. Surviving papyri from the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, document complex property transactions, inheritance disputes, and criminal proceedings, all governed by established legal principles rather than royal whim. The famous eloquent peasant text from this period even portrays a common farmer successfully petitioning for justice against powerful officials by appealing to universal principles of ma'at. The pharaonic leadership model was not perfect. It permitted tremendous inequality, normalized slavery, and concentrated power among elites. Yet it also produced remarkable stability and cultural achievement across millennia, an accomplishment few modern states can claim. The oldest nation-states today date back mere centuries, while Egypt maintained cultural and political continuity for over 3,000 years. The contrast with contemporary leadership becomes particularly stark when examining resource management. Modern economies frequently deplete resources for immediate gain, while the pharaohs instituted sustainable agricultural and construction practices. The annual Nile flood was not merely exploited but systematically managed through nilometers that measured water levels, canals that distributed water to fields, and grain storage facilities that preserved surpluses for lean years. Joseph's biblical administration during 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, while not confirmed in Egyptian records, reflects the pharaonic approach to long-term resource planning that modern economies rarely match. Archaeological evidence confirms that massive grain storage facilities were indeed constructed during the Middle Kingdom, allowing Egypt to weather environmental challenges that might have collapsed less prepared societies. The pharaohs also understood the power of symbolic communication in ways that transcended language barriers. The Nama palette, dating to approximately 3100 BCE during the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, used visual imagery to communicate royal power and cosmic order in ways immediately comprehensible to both literate elites and the general population. This sophisticated approach to public communications created shared cultural understanding across diverse populations. During the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, 285 to 246 BCE, even as Greek culture influenced Egypt, the Ptolemaic ruler still presented himself in traditional pharaonic regalia and commissioned Egyptian-style temples. He recognized that legitimate governance required cultural continuity rather than imposed innovation, a lesson many colonial and post-colonial administrations have failed to learn. The final clue to pharaonic leadership wisdom may lie in how they approach death itself. Modern leaders rarely confront their mortality directly, but Egyptian pharaohs spent enormous resources preparing for the afterlife. This was not mere superstition but a profound leadership strategy that forced rulers to consider their eternal legacy. The judgment scene depicted in the Book of the Dead shows the deceased's heart weighed against the feather of Ma'at, suggesting that even divine kings would ultimately be judged by how well they upheld cosmic truth and justice. This accountability to transcendent principles has largely vanished from contemporary leadership. When President Franklin D. Roosevelt died in office in 1945 after leading America through Depression and World War, he left behind no great monument to himself, a stark contrast to the pharaonic tradition. Yet in his commitment to rebuilding American institutions for long-term stability rather than short-term advantage, Roosevelt perhaps came closer to pharaonic wisdom than most modern leaders. The legacy of pharaonic leadership offers several enduring lessons. First, legitimate governance requires spiritual and moral dimensions that transcend mere political authority. Second, effective leadership integrates economic, cultural, military, and administrative functions rather than treating them as separate domains. Third, sustainable power comes from building institutions that outlast individual rulers. Fourth, successful societies balance central coordination with respect for regional diversity. Fifth, truthfulness and justice are not optional virtues but essential foundations for legitimate rule. Perhaps most importantly, the pharaohs understood that true leadership focuses not on the immediate horizon but on eternity. In an age of accelerating change and short-term thinking, this may be their most valuable lesson, that greatness in leadership comes not from rapid transformation but from sustainable stewardship of civilization's most precious resources, its cultural heritage, institutional knowledge, and moral foundations. As the sun sets over the Giza Plateau today, the Great Pyramid of Khufu stands as it has for 4,500 years, a monument not merely to architectural genius or royal ego, but to a profound understanding of leadership that transcends time itself. In its perfect proportions and astronomical alignments, it embodies a truth that modern leaders would be wise to rediscover, that true power lies not in dominating the present moment, but in building for eternity.